right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Director McGallis and the Finance Committee. We will move on to the regular meeting of the Regional Transportation Authority. There's a little reverberation here, but I'll scoot this back. So I call this meeting to order. Let's everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, if we may. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Director Anderson?
Here.
Director Buchanan? Director Colson?
Here.
Director DeWitt?
Here.
Director Durrani?
Here.
Director Frega?
Aye.
Director Fuentes? Aye. Director Hobson?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director McGallis?
Here.
Director Melvin?
Here.
Director Pang?
Here.
Director Ross?
Here.
Director Totten? Here. Director Triani?
Here.
Chairman Dillard?
Here.
We have a quorum of 15 present with 1 absent.
Great. Thank you, Madam Secretary, and all. Before we begin, I see her sitting out there, and she's a financial advisor to the Regional Transportation Authority. But the lovely woman in pink back there is Courtney Shea, who is a financial advisor. Her father, Jerry Shea, passed away within the last week. Jerry was the House Majority Leader for many years in Springfield. He was a distinguished and outstanding chairman of the University of Illinois. And probably the highlight of this incredible career that Jerry Shea had, and he was bigger than life, was for a couple of years stint, he was actually a member of the Regional Transportation Authority. So Courtney, we're sorry for the loss of your dad. He is truly, as the Chicago Tribune and other newspapers pointed out, literally one of the giants of state and city politics and government, who served in so many different capacities the state of Illinois and its citizens very well, and we were blessed to have him as a member of this board for a couple of years, and just an incredible career by a bigger-than-life gentleman. So, Courtney, we appreciate your help to be Hickey and to the RTA and to our staff all the time, but our condolences, especially at the holiday season, on the loss of your dad. So thank you. Thank you. All right. Item 3A is the approval of the minutes from the meeting we held on November 17th of 2015. Any questions or comments on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion and a second. We adopt those. Director Pang moves that we adopt those minutes, seconded by Senator or Director Totten. And why don't we, Audrey, just for the basis of building a roll call, take the roll on the minutes, please.
Okay. Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Colson?
Yes.
Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Durrani?
Yes.
Director Frega?
Aye.
Director Fuentes?
Yes.
Director Hobson?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Aye.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Pang?
Yes.
Director Ross?
Yes.
Director Totten?
Yes.
Director Triani?
Yes.
Chairman Dillard?
Yes.
5 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. And they are approved. How many ayes was that?
15 ayes.
15, okay. Item 4 is the public comment section of our meeting. We do not have any scheduled speakers for today, so item 5 is Director Leanne Redden's, or Executive Director Leanne Redden's report. Leanne?
Good morning, everyone. As I say, I begin where I always begin every month, with the status, unfortunately, of the state delinquencies. And Bea had already mentioned this in her earlier report, but the state, as of today, owes us almost $242 million. The cost of the short-term borrowing carrying that obligation for year-to-date is about just shy of $1.4 million also. So on the state front, perhaps, I say with a hint of caution, there might be a little bit of good news on the horizon as we head into next calendar year regarding the state budget front. Early in December, the governor and the 4 legislative leaders convened a public meeting to discuss the budget impasse. That was followed by a private meeting, which I think is perhaps the more important point of the discussions. A second private meeting was held between the governor and the leaders last week, and some of you probably read in the media today that there is scheduled to be another discussion with the same group again today. So we kind of holding out some hope that at least people are talking, and maybe there might be some progress in some of this. But there's perhaps, but we can. It's the holiday season, so I'm looking forward to the season of giving, perhaps. Yeah, I've got a son who keeps running around. It's a Christmas miracle, so perhaps that's what it is. We'll see. I might have to eat my words. Last week, though, the Senate did return to pass some legislation appropriating monies for several special funds that have been collected by the state. Those funds had not been distributed as intended because of the budget impasse. The bill provided state funding for 911 call centres, lottery winners, but it also, I think, importantly, released some funds for cities out of the motor fuel tax revenues collected that is used. Those funds are used to support, road and bridge repairs, but also very important as we head into the winter season, purchase of salt and supplies for the winter weather. A similar version of that bill had been passed by the House earlier, so that has gone through. Both chambers are now not scheduled to be back in Springfield until January 13. If anything else happens, we will certainly keep you posted. Looking to the federal side of things, I actually have some very good news here. December 4th, the Congress passed a fully funded surface transportation bill, finally, and it was signed by the president on that Friday. And actually, I think you probably recall at our last meeting here, the Finance Committee, I was leaving right after that meeting to head to Washington. Jeremy was already out there. So we actually happened to be on Capitol Hill when the Senate passed the bill. And then the following day, they rushed it over to the White House for the president to sign it. So I think the important I just wanted to give you kind of a quick synopsis of some of the elements of that bill. It increases across-the-board funding above MAP 21 levels for all of us. There is a 10% increase in the first year of funding for transit, as well as 18% over the 5-year authorization nationwide. So with the baseline being increased each year means that the next transportation bill going forward, and yes, we are already thinking about the next one 5 years out, it sort of guarantees us even at least level or at least higher funding levels because they can't cut from the previous bills. The next two major issues that came to our attention when the House bill was released in October, there were a couple of key things when it first started sort of coming together that really mobilized us and our coalition at the federal level. One of the things that was really a big issue on the front end was that there were limits placed on the federal transportation dollars, for example, like CMAQ, STP, and TIFIA, that could be used to support state of good repair funding formula and capital investment grants. So essentially, it was really limiting the ability for us to sort of flex monies between programs, and could have been very limiting to us in our region. So we really mobilized us and our DC team. Sometimes we've been talking about what are we doing for the money we're spending in some of these other contracts. We really mobilized full force, and we're very effective in working not just with the Illinois delegation, but key leaders in Congress. The second key issue was the House lowered the federal transportation matching share from 80% to 50% for capital investment grant programs, which is essentially core capacity, small starts and new starts. And again, that would have been a potential hindrance for us in our region. We really focused on those issues. With METRA, we met with the entire RTA delegation back in October in Washington, D.C. We really went through sort of point by point the dangers and the issues of those provisions. And I don't think they were sort of intended consequences that Congress was anticipating, but I think we were very effective, us and our D.C. team, speaking to these issues and helping educate the staff who were essentially super busy trying to work through committee and with their members on sort of finalizing this bill, but we actually got a lot of FaceTime with them and were able to talk through the details. CTA, METRA, PACE, and us sent numerous letters collectively and separately supporting amendments to the legislation, and we were very fortunate to have Representative Lipinski step up and really take the lead on that amendment that essentially stripped out those limitations as well as outlining other provisions in the bill that we were looking to see that would benefit us in our region. And the final House bill still had portions of that funding flexibility limits, but they were significantly altered to our region's benefit. Additionally, the core capacity and small starts programs, federal share was increased back to 80%. So success also again on that front. So very real, tangible successes that we accomplished from the work that we had been doing. Once the conference committee started, we were able to share again our concerns at the staff level with staff, who, as I mentioned, was sort of being drawn, 10 different directions, trying to finalise legislative language. After memos, emails, phone calls, personal discussions, the final bill passed, completely eliminating the flex limitations and increased the federal share on the New Starts program up from the 50% to 60%. So we didn't get it back to the 80. Historically, they hadn't been funding at 80%, but we were still looking to push it above the 50%. Positive train control, as we've talked about a lot, was a big issue specifically for Metro, but obviously a big issue important for us here at RTA. We were, in October, met with the Deputy Secretary of the DOT, Victor Mendez, and were able to sort of talk to the very specific issues and the concerns we have. I think many of you know that Don Orsino, Metro's Executive Director, really became one of the national spokespeople for the PTC issue. The deadline was extended to January 1st, beyond January 1st, 2016. And so now we have a couple of year extension on that bill. We were able to participate in a media event when we were in Washington and met with members of Congress to raise awareness on that issue. The result was that the deadline was pushed back 2 years with the possibility of an additional 2 years to allow, show good faith progress, but allow for some flexibility in terms of rolling out this very expansive program. And I should say an unfunded mandate to a large extent. But I think one of the key things that the legislation did include, the FAST Act did include, was a provision of $199 million, which is still really just a drop in the bucket, but it is some federal funding towards the implementation of PTC. And just to sort of summarize, I think the RTA's advocacy efforts and our teamwork with the service boards and our partners across the country really paid off in a huge way. The competitive discretionary bus and bus facility program is part of the FAST Act for the first time in 4 years. The Railroad Rehabilitation Improvement Financing, or RIF as we like to call it because we love our acronyms, provides loans and loan guarantees to railroad projects. This program has a lot of money in it but has been severely underutilized because of very serious, sort of very strict restrictions that the feds have on accessing those dollars. And the FAST Act actually essentially unlocked that program by streamlining USDOT approval process. And we really see that as having a lot of potential for us and big railroad projects, and specifically for us to be able to tap that for projects such as Union Station in our region. So we and Metro are all very excited, and Amtrak are very excited about that. The RTA and the service boards made hundreds of calls, meetings, emails, and met with staff during the process to make sure that our positions were well known and supported. Unfortunately, the FAST Act doesn't address the long-term funding source issues and funding for the Highway Trust Fund going forward. And although it does provide money for states to attempt pilot programs to address long-term stable funding. So as I mentioned, we're actually looking to the next federal transportation bill, and we continue to work on these longer-term funding issues. We continued to work with our Getting America to Work coalition and requested that members engage with their delegations about the important priorities about these overall funding levels. And now a permanent transit tax benefit parity provision is included in the omnibus spending bill that was introduced yesterday, and it's expected to be voted on tomorrow. That would put transit benefit on parity with the parking benefit at $250. And if it passes, it will make it permanent, so we won't have to be sort of pounding the pavement every year to push for that benefit extension that essentially takes up a lot of everybody's time trying to push for that very good benefit that really, I think, has a lot of repercussions for all of us across the country. The bill should be voted on, as I said, tomorrow, but the fate of it is still up in the air. There's people trying to hang other things on that. So we're watching closely, but we hope our piece of this stays intact and the whole thing gets passed. The transit community knows that there's still a lot of work to do, and as I said, we have begun work on the next funding transportation bill. Just to wrap up a little bit on the coalition-specific work, minutes after the President signed the bill, we sent out a press release to major papers across the country, including the Trib, New York Times, Politico, The Hill, and the Philadelphia Inquirer, with the help of some of our partners backing that. The coalition also made available to all its members really the toolkit that we were using to have them thank members of Congress for the work and the support that they gave us and help promote that locally within everybody's local communities. At the same time, we collaborated on drafting and submitting and publicizing Chairman Dillard's letter to the editor, or letter to members of Congress, I should say, representing our issues on the transit parity item. It was picked up by Politico Morning Transportation, which inside the Beltway is the most influential transportation tip sheet in Washington. So that was a great pickup to have. GATW members also have expressed the desire to continue to work with us on some of these other funding issues. The focus on, for example, some of the other things that we continue to push for is the increasing in funding and funding for Tiger grants and Tiger grants to support transit projects across the region. The passage of the FAST Act would not have been possible without the diverse national coalition of the transportation organizations that we put together to really advocate for the principles that really led to the passing of the bill in Congress. So switching gears, on December 3rd, we have mentioned this with the board before, but the RTA Customer Service Center located at 69 West Washington closed its doors. But on December 4th, the Customer Service Center essentially reopened, but in 4 City of Chicago Department of Family and Support Services locations, 4 of their regional sites around. The move was very successful and customers have experienced a seamless transition. This is an exciting venture for us and really allowing us to better, in partnership with the City of Chicago, but to better serve our mutual customers, as I've referred to it as sort of one-stop shopping in many cases for many of the clients that are coming to see us, and really serve the focus on the seniors and people with disabilities. Too often RTA and City of Chicago staff are referring customers back and forth between the 2 locations, and so this really eliminates the need for that happening. So just to wrap up, as we're approaching the holidays, I want to wish the board well throughout the holiday season. I want to thank you for all your support and insight over the past year. I also want to publicly thank the staff here at the RTA for their commitment and their hard work. It's been a pretty challenging year for all of us, with a lot of uncertainty both at the state and at the federal level. Our staff, I can say, has kept its focus through good times and bad and really remained positive. And I think they've done a phenomenal job at making me look good, making you guys look good, and really rebuilding bridges back with the service boards and other agencies around the other transportation agencies across our region. And I really think we've achieved a lot in the last year or so. So with that, in January, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be delivering my 2015 sort of year in review. I like to sort of get through the budget year and then do it early January and talk about some of those successes and a preview of what we're going to work on for 2016. So with that, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Leanne, very, very, very much. Item 6 is the RTA Transit Access Advisory Committee update from Barry Taylor. Hello, Barry.
Good morning. Usually I provide highlights of our last meeting, but you have a copy of our summary, and I'm going to dispense with that, but happy to answer any questions. I just want to focus on 2 points. One is, some of you probably know, this is my last presentation to the board, and my time with the committee will be ending at the end of this year. The committee has worked hard. When we started, this new committee had been reformulated to have representatives of different disability-oriented organizations, and it was a different approach than had been done before. And what we tried to do is provide positive feedback when we thought the RTA was doing the right thing, and constructive criticism when we thought there were concerns and things that needed to be different. And I feel like our relationship with RTA staff has been very positive and respectful, and I appreciate that. I feel like we're leaving the committee in good hands. Stepping into the chairmanship will be Greg Pullman, who you've met before. He's been the vice chair, and he's a great advocate for people with disabilities. He works for the Lighthouse of the Blind. He happens to be blind himself and a daily rider of the CTA. And so I think, when we talk about leadership on this committee, I think it's appropriate that a person with disability takes the next step. and moves it to the next level. And he brings, I think, both personal and professional expertise that will be helpful. And finally, I just wanted to, sort of as my parting words, remind you of what I think is really sort of the key thing for our committee, and that is how critical public transit is for people with disabilities, both mainline and paratransit. People with disabilities rely heavily upon public transit. Often it's their only option, either because of their disability or because they're poor or both. And it's literally a lifeline for people with disabilities to the rest of society. Often when budgetary items and problems arise, the cuts that happen go to public service, human services, public transportation, and people with disabilities. And I would just implore you that as you make some hard decisions in the future, you remember that any service cuts and any fare increases could have a devastating impact on this population. And I hope you'll consider that carefully before you move forward with that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Barry, and amen to that. Any questions for Barry? Barry, thank you. I mean, 5 years on the committee, yeoman's service. And as a small token of our appreciation, Michael, if you would, on behalf of the RTA, we thank you. Don't go away. You might not be on the committee, but your input is incredibly valuable to us. I know your successor do some pro bono work with the Chicago Lighthouse, and he will be a great addition. But we continue to need your voice, and we very much appreciate your service. So thank you, Barry. Item 7 is the approval of the consent items that went through Director McGallis's Finance Committee a little earlier today. They appear on the board agenda. It's item 7A, the short and long-term borrowing ordinances, 7B, the ordinance authorizing the 2015 capital program, fourth quarter, and 7C, the ordinance adopting the 2016 regional and service board budgets. Any more discussion on those, or can I have a motion to take all three of those? Thank you, Director McGallis and Ike and Director Colson in particular, but all of you with respect to the Finance Committee and the finances. We very much appreciate we have a very conscientious board, and Director Hobson, you know who you are. But you all take your job seriously. And everybody here brings a different perspective with respect to not only transit issues in general, but particularly in this day and age, the finances of the Regional Transportation Authority. And I know that Leanne and I, and the staff deeply appreciate it. So, Ike, thank you so much for your yeoman and bulldogish work. And the suggestions you've made, I think, not only improve the RTA budget process, but those of the service boards. And the service boards certainly respect Director McGallis and our Finance Committee, and that's a tribute to the hard work that they do along with the staff. So is there a motion for these three ordinances? Director Melvin, thank you very much, moves, seconded by Director Friga. And with that, is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection, leave is granted, and Madam Secretary, please report it as such.
15 ayes and 1 absent.
Thank you. Item 8 is new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, I do want to remind the board that the next scheduled meeting date is Thursday, January 21st. Seems a long way away, but time flies. Starting with committees at 8:30, followed by the board meeting. Echoing what Leanne said, I just want to thank you for what I believe has been a very positive year. And while other units of local government in Illinois and the state itself has some just massive issues, and we have our share, including primarily our state of good repair needs that have backlogged. There is no doubt that we are moving mass transit, no pun intended, forward in this region. We have a stable pension program. We have a very good credit rating, very high credit rating. We have the lowest operating cost per mile of any of our peer systems. And we have made, with our service boards, some tremendous improvements in the past year for our riders, whether it's the new CTA stations, Metra's long-term plan to improve its rolling stock, we've mentioned our customer service center improvements. But in terms of seamless ridership, we've moved light speed this year, including a flawless rollout, knock on wood, of our Ventra electronic system that everybody around me now has it on the train. It's been wonderful, and we clearly have a new level of cooperation, which is in this time and age is just so sorely needed between the RTA and our service boards. And I can't thank the staff enough, as Leanne said. A challenging year, but our staff is world class in my estimation, and this board is phenomenal. And every time I see your appointing authorities, I thank them, saying, "Wow, you brought some great people with a lot of different input to the RTA board." So in a time when there are a lot of issues that are out there facing some of the other local units of government around the state of Illinois, I'm very honored and proud of the way we have handled ourselves, especially in the last year. So everybody have a great holiday season, and I look forward to working with you next year to continue the great improvements and strides we have made, and trying to figure out where we get our operating capital for the next decade and beyond. With that, we're going to go to executive session, I believe, and if there's no objection, yes, Director Ross. Sure,
Observation,
please.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm sure that I speak for all members of the board when I thank you and Leanne for your leadership and the good work of our staff. I think we have an outstanding staff, and the depth of the discussion that takes place in these meetings, I think, has improved over the past year and a half. I believe that board members feel that we're getting responses, legitimate responses to our questions, and it's just a great environment. I'd also like to just make one observation about three numbers we heard in today's meeting that I think speak to the enormity of the job that we face as a transit agency. We heard earlier that we need $36 billion to be in a state of good repair. In today's budget, we just approved $3.8 billion over 5 years, which is only about 10.5% of what we need. And then we heard in the federal transportation bill, $61.1 billion going to public transit. If we got $36 billion of it, we would have over half. We would take over half of the dollars that have been budgeted federally over the next 5 years. So I think those three numbers alone just point out the significant struggle that we have as a region. We all know that this has a potential to impact ridership, and so again, just my compliments to our staff for the recommendations that they've made and the support that this board has given to them.
Thank you. We desperately need a state infrastructure bill, and Leanne and I and all of us know we're not going to make up that $30 billion overnight. We're talking a long-term plan, but for the stability of the region, and I think it's been demonstrated, and I try to in public constantly talk about how critical mass transit is to the economic development and vitality of the 6-county metropolitan region. The return on investment is at least 4 to 1. The Brown Line is a great example that I use all the time, where within a mile of the Brown Line, there was a 40% increase in the value of property. And it's been proven time and time again that the reason that Chicago, and we've got lots of issues outside of the central business core, is and has led America in corporate relocations the last 2 years, is aside from our talent and our location, Mayor Emanuel has effectively used the ability to have and transport your employees to and from work. Our system, the RTA service boards, is a reason that many of these corporations have relocated to Chicago. So your comments are well taken, and we need to go to work on a capital bill in Springfield. Yes, Director Totten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing we've got to start looking at, Leanne, is driverless cars are coming on board. I don't know whether I'm happy about that or not, but it's an up-and-coming thing. We could reduce labor costs if we had driverless buses.
Duly noted.
I have one more comment.
Director Pang.
I just have one more comment. I was thinking about the incredible funding gaps that you pointed out, Director Ross, and the only way through this, we are so different than each other, and we have managed as a board to really come together under the leadership of Chairman Dillard, Leanne, the staff, Jeremy, just such true professionals, and really that is replicated in the service boards. We saw that in the budget presentations, and everybody's working together so well at every level, and there's complete and total acrimony in government from the top to the bottom, but not in this board and not across the service boards. And we are not in agreement on every single item, but we find the points of agreement. And you did this very focused leadership on bringing together the Getting America to Work Coalition, which a lot of us question, like, how is it making a difference? It made a difference. I bet if you went back to that slide that says thank you, Congress, it probably is the only one they received this year. The only thank you note they received. And that is huge. And so I just, if we can keep it healthy like this, because as resources get further constrained, it can pull people apart, and then you get nothing. So if we stay together across the service boards and always look for what we do agree on, instead of focusing on what we don't agree on, which I think is what's happened here, I think we'll whittle away at this number, So anyway, just really huge, huge gratitude as a citizen, and really proud to be part of the board.
Thank you. And I do want to commend, and I do it all the time, our congressional delegation in a bipartisan way. And I always tell them transit is a good bipartisan denominator. They have stepped up, including, and I don't want to name names, obviously Congressman Lipinski is head of the Mass Transit Caucus, but we have some very good bipartisan support. And Congressman Dold, Hultgren, Roscom is a major pusher now of transit benefit parity. Congressman Quigley. Our delegation's been great, including our 2 United States senators and their staff. Yesterday I received 2 or 3 emails from congressional staff, and the staff gets it, and the staff is critical to driving the members. One thing that I do believe when Leanne talks about the Get America to Work Coalition, when we go to Washington, we see major national leaders, Congressman Schuster, Congressman DeFazio from Washington. So we don't just meet with, and we aren't just not leaders of our own congressional delegations, thought processes. We see the major transportation leaders from the other states. And they now know us. They call us by our first name. And that comes from the leadership of our congressional delegation introducing us to their national leadership. But Chicago very proudly is a national leader on the transit scene, and that's why we got the results that we have so far. So, any other questions or comments? Nadine, why don't you give us the legal reasons why we can go into executive session?
If the board would vote to adjourn from executive session, we could then proceed to that portion of the meeting pursuant to subsection 2C21 of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. There's a motion by Director Friga that we do that, seconded by Director Ross. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Leave is granted. Thank you.